The story of Chanderi is an old one. It can be traced back to a millennia. It is mentioned repeatedly in the famous travelogue of the Arab traveller Al-Biruni. In his Kitabul Hind, he mentions that situated on the connecting route between the Uttarapath and Dakshinapath, the major trading routes, it was an important halting stage. Traders came here with their caravanserais from all over the world, with their exotic produce and diverse influences. And it is not surprising that Chanderi flourished as a peaceful, prosperous township, also inheritor to a rare multicultural inheritance. The old city of Chanderi was settled amidst a forest in an area what is known today as Budi Chanderi. We can see even today remnants of beautiful Jain temples and old palaces here. In the medieval period, the population shifted to the present site. This location was naturally very well protected and nobody found it necessary to build a massive fort here. It was difficult for an invader to reach. To protect the city, a fortified wall was raised all around its circumference.
Chanderi in Madhya Pradesh is at a distance of 110 kilometers from Jhansi. Its cultural significance is no less than its strategic importance. One encounters buildings of all types in this fortified city. The residents of Chanderi were well protected and prospered for centuries.
द्वापर युग से बसी चंदेरी दुनिया ने यह मानी है, सवा पहर कंचन की वर्षा हो गई बनकर पानी है। फल फूलों से लदी चंदेरी सबको लगी सुहानी है, भारत के वीर सपूतों की यह रियासत रही पुरानी है।
The Chanderi described by Ibn Battuta lies hidden today in dense forest. It is called Budi Chanderi. A German historian has discovered 55 Jain temples here. Most of them have been built during the 10th and 11th centuries. There are many broken idols and stone inscriptions that lie scattered in the surrounding area.
Chanderi was on the trade route of ancient India, connecting North India with South India. Most of the caravans used to pass through Chanderi. Chanderi was a very historical center also, and a very mighty fort was built by Rajput kings there. The fort was there right from the 10th, 11th century onwards. But in the 15th and 16th century, during the period of Maidani Rai, he further fortified it and it became a very impregnable fort.
The main fort is built on the top of a hill. The approaching enemy forces could be spotted from the commanding height. In times gone by, the hills and rocks served as suitable protection. Strong walls and towers were built to further strengthen the defenses. The sprawling ramparts girdled the city to serve as its shield. Fortified gates were strategically placed at sensitive spots, and the passages through these were narrow and uphill.
Chanderi was a very important link between north and south. That is why most of the important sultans also, right from Balban, Muhammad Tughlaq, even Alauddin Khilji and almost all the important rulers, once in their lifetime they had passed through this area. So it was such a very important strategic position also, and it was on the trade route of medieval and ancient India also. That is why Babur wanted to conquer it. He came to the conclusion that unless and until he conquers this very important fort of Chanderi, he would not be able to complete his dream of conquering the whole northern India.
The most memorable event in the fort's history is perhaps the encounter between Babur and Maidani Rai. The ruler of Chanderi fought with great courage and became a martyr defending Chanderi. It was after this decisive battle that Babur decided to stay back in India, and this is how the Mughal dynasty was born. Babur constructed a mosque during his stay in Chanderi. Its architecture indicates that it may have been built on the remains of an old structure. The pillars are decorated with verses of the Holy Quran. Hard stone has been delicately carved and testifies to the skills of local craftsmen. The mosque is small but impressive.
Chanderi is on the imperial route. These are in the post-Sultanate period. There are several regional centers come up, and some of them grow in greater stature. They are seats of culture. They are forts. They are seats of culture. They are seats of economy, seats of industry. Chanderi is a major example.
The Jama Masjid, adorned with beautiful domes and minarets, is reckoned among the oldest mosques in Bundelkhand. These buildings could be commissioned in Chanderi at that time because its rulers were skilled in sharing the prosperity of traders and merchants who passed through the city. These riches contributed to the building of this mosque.
It's an important fort in the Malwa on the road to the Deccan. Why are these forts important? Why do they come up where they come up? If you take into account a fort like Kumbhalgarh, you will find that most of these forts are strategically located either on the trade routes or very close to the trade routes. They are the forts which can command the revenue of the trade route, because trade would mean toll, taxes, duties, levies. Trade would mean plunder, loot, brigandage. Don't underestimate these factors of the medieval period and early modern period. I would say don't underestimate these factors even during the modern period or contemporary period.
In the beginning, a small fortress was built here. It grew with the passage of time into a large fort called Kirtidurg. Today it is known as Bala Killa and is considered a good example of the building style that was popular during the 14th and 15th centuries. The structure is solid and utility outweighs aesthetics.
Wherever there is surplus, the ruling class of that area will try to establish a particular stronghold which can then become a regular supply of that surplus. Once you collect the surplus has to accumulate. And once the surplus accumulates, the surplus has to be protected. Because you are not the only one who is eyeing that surplus. There are competitors who are also looking at the surplus with the same eyes as yours. So if you don't protect that surplus, there is likelihood of somebody else coming across and taking and snatching that surplus away from you. Because this is a period when you will not find very large, centrally administered areas.
Badal Mahal is neither a palace nor an entrance to some palace. Its two towering minarets, 15 meters high, are joined by a beautifully carved arch that resembles the delicate filigree work done in silver. Recent excavations have provided evidence of a beautiful two-storied palace that once stood here.
An interesting aspect of the Chanderi story is not very well known. It is the city's special relationship with the Sufi tradition. The Sufis were mystic saints who preached a unique message of humanism and cultural harmony. One of the most famous Sufi saints was Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia, who had his seat in Delhi. He was a contemporary of Sultan Alauddin Khilji, and one of his favorite disciples was a well-known musician and a polyglot Amir Khusro. Many of his descendants are buried here in Chanderi and bear testimony to the influence of Sufis in this area.
The fort at Chanderi is famous for the graves where family members of the famous Sufi saint Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia were buried. These were built during the reign of Hoshang Shah Gori, who was his devout follower.
You have got very intricate jali works there. You just cannot think of it how, these people have been able to conceive it and then convert it into execution. The second important landmark is in Muhammad Ghaus Mosque in Gwalior Fort, and the third development of the same thing is in Fatehpur Sikri in Sheikh Salim Chishti's Maqbara. There the jali works is very important and very beautiful, very minute, and you cannot find that kind of jali works except at one place, that is Sidi Sayyid Masjid in Gujarat.
Kushak Mahal was built in the middle of the 15th century by Ghiyasuddin, son of Mahmud Khilji, the Sultan of Malwa. Its building style reflects elements of Iranian and Afghan architecture, besides architectural traits of Indian palaces. Some historians are of the view that the ravages of time have turned it into a ruin, while others maintain it was never completed and remained a dream.
You feel the past grandeur, you cannot but feel yourself a little sad, a little nostalgic. You are not part of it, you are not there, you have nothing to do with it. And yet, strangely, these places emotively make you their own. And you start feeling like one of those citizens who must have lived in these forts, as if you have come and now you are looking at what you had lost.
Raja Rani Mahal is a complex of twin palaces built in the 16th century by Bir Singh Judeo to serve as residential apartments for the rulers of Chanderi. We are told that the old Satkanda Mahal was repaired and renovated for this purpose. At that time, the construction of regal mansions with many courtyards, Chaukhanda and Nokhanda, was in vogue, and this is the style followed here. Open courtyards and beautiful towers are the characteristic features of these buildings. Later rulers added the hammam, following the Mughal practice.
बुंदेला राजाओं ने यहाँ 253 वर्ष अक्षुण राज किया है, जिसमें चंदेरी में 1605 में महाराजा रामचंद्र ने ये राजा महल, रानी महल और कुआ, बावड़ी, मंदिर ये इनका और सराय का निर्माण कराया है।
Chanderi has many water tanks, ponds and stepwells. Some are rectangular and others circular. Many have beautiful open pavilions at ground level, decorated with small towers. These water bodies not only supplied drinking water but also served as recreational spaces in hot summers.
The mere mention of the word Chanderi evokes visions of colorful Chanderi sarees. These sarees, crafted from silk or cotton, are renowned the world over for their delicate zari work. The weavers of Chanderi are akin to great artists, dancers and musicians who pass on their craft skills to their successors in the Guru Shishya Parampara lovingly. Many of these weavers have been honored by the Government of India as master craftsmen. When we sit next to their looms here in the city, within the presence of the fort, we are reminded of the Kabir poem that talks of, metaphorically, of human life as something created by warp weft in the spindle.
Saris from Chanderi are world famous. It is said that the sari weavers of Chanderi were very prosperous. Their women never did any hard work. They grew their nails to test the fine quality of golden embroidery that made the saris so special. Times have changed. Today, the whole family has to toil tirelessly to make both ends meet. madrasa is situated a short distance away from the main settlement and is a bit of a misnomer. There is no madrasa here, but just another mausoleum decorated with fine stone carvings. There may have been an old school in its vicinity in the past. Shahzadi Ka Roza stands close by. This was a square building crowned with a beautiful dome, large balconies and canopies. This once attractive building is today a ruin.
It's a very beautiful serpentine bracket with all its undulations. It goes and it supports the chajjas. Nowhere else you can see this kind of beautiful brackets. It also originated from Chanderi. From Chanderi it went to Raisan. From Raisan it went to Gwalior Fort, and from Gwalior Fort it has been further perfected in Salim Chishti's Maqbara in Fatehpur Sikri.
For thousands of years, Chanderi and its environs have attracted ascetics and other spiritual seekers in the quest for salvation. This city was a settlement of rich Jain merchants who found security in the city's fortifications. The Titanic statues of Jain Tirthankars at Kandagiri present an impressive sight.
You have Hinduism, you have got Jainism, you have got Buddhism, you have got Islamic culture also. It has become a nucleus around which everything is revolving. It can of course be one of the World Heritage sites also. Not from the point of view of the volume of the monument, but a place where the whole urban texture has been even now, it is still standing there. So that way it has not undergone much of a change like that of Agra or Delhi. It is still kept in its own pristine purity.
With the passage of time, the majestic buildings of Chanderi have become dilapidated. Broken idols are strewn all over the place. These fragments of stone are not mute. If you are sensitive and willing to listen, they find speech. They begin to narrate stories of the glorious past of Chanderi. Each stone is a monument rich with a moving story to tell. Experts are trying hard to restore the glory of old buildings in Chanderi. One can hope that the restored fort will soon attract large numbers of tourists. This is a matter of some satisfaction, but we can't overlook the imminent threat. Development has increased the pressure on the environment. The apprehension is that Chanderi too may have to address the problems that have spelt the ruin of other heritage sites.